Probably want to mute ourselves, guys, while she's talking.
Yep. Thank you.
Shannon, you are muted on our end. Okay.
Good afternoon. I am Shannon Peoples. I'm a volunteer facilitator for StriveScan, and I want to welcome you to this afternoon session, the college essay. And so before we begin, let's go over a few housekeeping items for this exploration activity. So for many, if you've never been on Zoom, if you've never been in a webinar, if you want to ask a question, please use the question and answer button to type your questions to the presenters at any time, and they will be able to answer those during the course of the presentation. Please, your camera and your microphone are automatically off because this is a webinar. So that means that the panelists can't see or hear you. So again, if you have questions, feel free to put those in the question and answer. And if this is your only session that you've signed up for, or maybe you signed up for others, please, this is one of the many college presentations that are offered. Please check out the schedule at moacac.org. And then a recording will be available for all sessions. So if for some reason your connection goes awry, that you'll be able to always go back and refer to this session. So without any further ado, I want to introduce our speakers for the afternoon, Mr. Mark Kleins, Milton Berwin, and Trudy Stein. So they're going to share with you the college essay. Thank you and enjoy the session.
You ready? All right, I think we're going. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's kind of weird not seeing you guys, so I miss seeing your faces. My name is Trudy Steins, and I am a St. Louis admissions representative for Central Methodist University. We are located in Fayette, Missouri, about 25 miles northwest of Columbia. We're a small private school of about 1,200 students. And presenting with me today will also be Milt Berwin from Illinois Wesleyan College. And they are a liberal arts college over in Illinois, about halfway, a little over halfway between St. Louis and Chicago if you're going up 55 in Bloomington, Illinois. And they are a school of about 1,500 students. And then Mark Kleins will be finishing up the presentation with us today from Truman State University. And that's a public school here in Missouri, if you're not aware of it. It's kind of in the middle of northern Missouri. If you go over to Columbia and go up about an hour and a half, you'll be in Kirksville, Missouri, which is where Truman is. And that's a school of about 5,000 students. So we're going to talk to you guys today about your college admission essay and kind of all the different parts that go with it, and hopefully give you guys some good information on what you can be doing as you prepare that. So what we're going to basically be covering is kind of an overview of our presentation today is going to talk about understanding your narrative and kind of the purpose of it and where are we coming from and what do colleges do with those essays, and helping you develop the best essay that you can to present yourself, and help talk about finding a good topic and telling your story, some good tips and tricks on what we're gonna on what makes a good essay, as well as maybe some do's and some don'ts. And then there'll definitely be some times for questions at the end that you guys have been instructed to kind of put through there throughout that presentation. And if it's something we can answer along the way, we will, but if it's something that we can wait till the end, we'll do it then, okay? So why are we here and what's the point? Basically there's a lot of, you guys are in a position today where there's just a lot of pressure where you feel like I got to write the perfect essay. I got to write this college essay. And, and sometimes kids get pretty stressed out about it and pretty overwhelmed with the process. So hopefully, by listening and learning from today, you guys will be ready for, to write that essay and, not feel so much pressure, because the one thing we don't want you guys to do is feel like you get in a panic and then you go to plan B, and plan B is Google the best college essay. And unfortunately, or fortunately, our admissions representatives are pretty familiar with those. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. And then we also want you guys to understand why there are college essays and why schools use them. They will use them to see how you write. Are you a good writer? Do you think critically? Do you use good grammar and punctuation? What is your overall writing style? So they want to see how you are as a writer and as a thinker. And some schools will also use that in terms of, did you take time to proofread? Did you, are there errors? Did you, forget to change the university that you're sending the essay to? Because the last thing you want to do is send Truman an essay that says, hey, I really want to go to Illinois Wesleyan. So, you want to make sure that you're not doing any of that. Because that's going to send a reflection of you and how you are. They also want to see kind of if you will fit in within their rigor of their curriculum as a writer and as a thinker. And then also, did you, sometimes schools will use it maybe as like a placement in an English course. Are you going to be ready for our starting freshman English course, or based on your writing, would we have to look at some other areas? Sorry. The other thing is that the people who are reading the essays want to learn about you as an individual. A college is looking at that and going, okay, I can read your resume. I can, see your ACT scores and your grade point average, but what can I learn about you? What's special about you? What do you appreciate about yourself? Why should you be accepted at school? Why should you maybe get that scholarship if maybe you're using these essays as also a competitive scholarship opportunity, because you're going to see that there's a lot of crossover there. And what you can do to make it individual. And, because, they want to make sure that you have the ability to reflect on yourself. They want to make sure that you can, find that way to fit on campus. And the best way to do that is to learn about you. And then the other part right now is, because of the schools being test optional, because of ACT scores and such, I think you're going to see that the essays are going to have a little bit more weight in that admissions process, because that's one less piece of information. If we're not getting test scores, that's one less piece of information that maybe a school is going to have to maybe determine whether you get that scholarship or whether you're admitted. So that's kind of why we think it's important to really take time and learn how to write a good college essay. Okay, so what is it really? When it comes down to it, your college admissions essay is really just a story about you, a story about yourself, a story about your life. If you think about it from a reader's perspective, what are they going to want to hear about? What are they going to want to learn about with you? Where do you come from? What's occurred in your life? Who are some people that have had an impact? I mean, all of those things are, basically about you. And in terms of kind of from a storyteller perspective, sit back and ask yourself, what makes a good storyteller? What's a good story for you? What's a story that you like to hear? Who's a storyteller that can tell those great stories, or who, a story that you're reading that, what makes you want to turn that next page or finish that chapter or finish that book, and usually what you're looking for is somebody who can really make it entertaining. They can really engage you at the beginning. They can really give you a purpose from the very beginning of whatever it is you're reading. And that's what the people from admissions and the people who are reading these essays, that's where they're coming from. So you want to make sure that you're engaging them from the beginning. You're going to want to make sure that you're telling them a good story about you. You know, really the biggest testament would be is at the end of your essay, kind of like the end of a story. A really good story or a really good book is one where you want to know what happened next. You want to read the next chapter. You know, you want there to be another chapter. You want to read the next in the series because that first one was so good. So the best testament that you can have probably from a college representative or an admissions person reading your essay is, I want to know what happens next with this person. I want to know where their life is going to go next. And then they're going to want to be a part of that. And they're going to want to be a part of your campus to be able to tell that story. So, I mean, imagine if you're reading this and at the very end, that person's going, wow, I want to see where this kid's going next. I want to see what's next in their life. And the only way for me to be a part of that is for them to be on my college campus. So that's the best thing that you can be doing. Now, on the flip side, what makes a bad storyteller? That's, you know, think about what would disengage you from a story right away. Maybe it's too wordy. Maybe it's got too much information. Maybe it doesn't really make sense. Maybe it doesn't follow, you know, a linear pattern. You know, I am a horrible storyteller. I talk in circles and circles and circles and never make to a point. Drives my family and everybody crazy. At the same time, I used to write like that too. So it took a long time for me to learn how to write very differently because I would write in circles and never get to a point. And it becomes very, you know, you have to be concise. You have to get to your point. You have to get to your story. So one of the things that some colleges and such don't do is give you a limit on your essay. And you need to learn how to limit yourself. So, you know, they're not going to want to read a 4 or 5 page admissions essay. Your admissions essays should be maybe 1-2 pages at the most. So as you're getting started, you're going to think about understanding your narrative. And your narrative is basically your story. So as we're talking through, you know, the rest of the presentation, we're going to be talking about the different parts to that and talk about the beginning and how do you get started and how do you get that engagement, and then how do you build a topic, how do you get to the body, and how do you get to the point, and how do you and to wrap that up. So when you're talking and making sure that you're thinking through it all, you know, take time to think through it, pre-write just like you would an essay for school, and take the time to really get started well. So where to start? We're going to start at the beginning, go back to the beginning. You know, you want to kind of sit back and think about what the purpose of it is. You might want to talk to somebody else about it. Here's what I'm thinking about writing about. I think I was a high school counselor for 20 years, and a lot of kids would come in and be like, I don't know where to start. You know, that can sometimes be the hardest part of writing. And it might be helpful to sit down with a parent, a friend, a teacher, or somebody who can really help you think through where, you know, what's your starting point going to be, because that's going to be really, really important in you grabbing their attention. So be mindful of it. You know, you don't want to necessarily start with once upon a time, or I'm going to tell you a story about my life. You want it to have a good start and a good meat to it. You want to avoid things like, you know, a quote that might have nothing to do with the rest of the essay. It's a really good quote, but unless you follow it up with everything else that you want to talk about and it all ties together, that quote loses its power and loses its purpose. And again, those can easily be looked up on Google, and they become pretty obvious when they get pretty redundant. You don't want to talk about, you know, start with like, I'm an invisible man, or as one person for Truman put, started with, I'm a jerk. You know, that kind of sets a negative tone on the start of an essay. So you want to make sure that you make it engaging and that you make it interesting, so that from the very beginning, they're going to get hooked and they're going to want to continue to read that. An example was I was helping a kid with an essay, and she spent the entire first paragraph talking about how she lived an average life. She had an average life. She had 2 parents. She went to school. She had 2 sisters. She had a dog, and just kept talking about how average she was, and average, and, you know, And I know her purpose was to talk about how while her life was very average, on the inside it wasn't. But she spent so much time in her first paragraph making her so average that it really took away from the rest of the story, and nobody really, it wasn't interesting to continue on. So we had to put some hooks in. You got to put some things in that make a reader curious to finish. You want them to read the rest of it, and you got to put that in the beginning. So be thinking about those sort of things as you get started. So as we're moving into the body of the paragraph, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Berwin at Illinois Wesleyan University, and he's going to continue to talk about the other pieces of the essay before Mr. Kleins wraps it all up. So on to you, Mr. Berwin.
Thank you, Trudy. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Milt Berwin. I'm a regional admissions counselor based out of St. Louis for Illinois Wesleyan University. I've been in college recruitment for pushing almost 30 years. In regards to the college essay with COVID and so forth, a lot of things have changed for a lot of schools, including us. We have become test optional for the first time. We still would like to see the standardized test, the ACT or SAT. But in regards to the essay, which is going to be part of at least this year, your topic, when you're writing an essay, make sure you take your time and you think to yourself for a while to try to get your thoughts on what direction you're going to go with your essay. Over 2 pages is too much for us. I like to see it done in 1 page or maybe a page and a half. But with that being said, make sure your introduction is solid so it flows into your discussion, and make sure when you do your conclusion that you follow through with the conclusion, tying everything in. There's a number of different ways to go about getting to your point, but take your time when you're writing your essay. Get some ideas in your head before you start moving forward with it. It'll help the essay flow a little bit better. Can you slide me to the next one, Mark? In regards to the body, you talk about the different tensions and conflict in the essay, whether you have a number of options you see right here on the paper, but I see a lot of essays come through where students have had to deal with adversity and how it was flipped and how it became a positive experience for them versus a negative. Always try to look for, there's always can be some attention drawn to maybe some type of dark or negative statement in an essay, but to flip it and making sure that you learn from it is really a good way to go about explaining your situation. I've had students talk about their athletic background and something didn't work out, they got hurt. All of a sudden they fell back to music and how the music experience helped them kind of overcome, maybe sadness or just or finding happiness. So, in regards to the body and how you choose to write into that, it's entirely up to you. But one thing I do talk to students when before I move to getting away from the essay is make sure you know something about the schools that you're looking at. So if you know something about Illinois Wesleyan, or if you don't, check out the website, try to tie some of that into your essay. It catches our attention as well. And that goes for Central Methodist or Truman. I'm sure seeing something in your situation that you can tie into the experience or the statistics and so forth that we would have up at Illinois Wesleyan. The point or end, if you take some time, as I said earlier, you're talking and you take some time to think about what your point is, it'll help the entire essay flow a little bit better. In regards to, why you're writing this, how you articulate it, if you're able to express yourself in the discussion, it'll help you conclude the paper a lot easier, and you can tie all that in. You can see where it says avoid trailing off on the conclusion, starting a new idea and what have you. Stick to one subject. If you take some time to get an idea of where you're going with it, it'll help everything flow a little bit better. Why do people write? Well, for us, and probably all colleges, it's part of life. It's a necessity you're going to need throughout your life. And you look at the essays being written for college admissions right now. It gives us a better understanding of where you're coming from, what your background is. how well you're doing in simple, the English part of it. Be aware, make sure that you're aware of, your writing skills, your grammar, your spelling. Luckily, spell check and everything else we have on computers these days, it's pretty easy, but I would recommend always having someone review your essay, get some feedback from them before you submit something like that. Leave it at that. Finding your topic, again, there's so many things probably in your life that you could tie into your personal essay, your general essay. We also require a personal statement as well. But with that being said, 2 separate writing pages. So in regards to, the essay, again, you're finding a topic that you can tie something that you experienced in your life, discussing it, how it improved you, how it might be a connection to the school that you're looking at, why it would be a good match. Leave it at that. Well, at this time, I'm going to bring on Hines from Truman State. Mark, take it over.
All right. Thank you, Milt. Thank you, Trudy. Well, when you decide upon a topic and you have thought through how you're going to write it, and you have your closing argument or your closing statement, et cetera, when you look at your topic, you want to start asking yourself some of these types of questions, and it doesn't matter which ones, but if you're going to write a question about conflict, you can start asking, have I ever been betrayed? Or, have I ever felt superior or inadequate in this particular moment? When you start asking, or when they start asking about, tell me a little bit about yourself, which 2 or 3 moments would jump out at you, and how did those 2 or 3 moments impact you and make you who you are today? So as you start to think about all these different things, you can ask yourself some of these different types of questions. One that I always like is, if I'm not sleeping, what's keeping me up at night? Am I thinking too much about my job? Am I worried about my girlfriend, my boyfriend, or, am I worried about the test I have tomorrow or in 2 days? Am I worried about the college essay? Are they going to like it or not? How am I going to write it? So you want to start asking yourselves some of these types of questions so that you can be able to answer it. And your essay can actually answer some of these questions for you if you come up and if you do the essay preparation right, is what I would say. So when you tell your story, you finally decided on your topic, you have an idea what you want to write about, what questions you're going to answer in the topic, how you're going to close it, you're ready to go. Choose a tense, and don't choose all 3. You have to do it, and this goes back to something Trudy said early on about potential class placement. Choose a tense and stay with that tense. What we don't like to see is a student jumping back and forth from future or past tense, or from first, second, or third person. If you want to write from the outside looking in, that's fine. If you want to write about something in the future and you want to kind of make it a make-believe story, that's fine. But just stay in that, because when you start bouncing around, you're going to confuse us. And what are we going to do when we get confused? We're going to put it down. So we want to read it. We want to learn about you, but you have to stay focused. Be aware how you articulate the story. We are all human beings. All of us on the admissions side, we're going to read a lot of essays. We're just going to tell you that up front. We're going to read a lot of essays. And we're going to read the same essay 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 20 times. The difference is it's person versus 1 versus person 2 versus person 3 story. A typical one always seems to be, as Milt focused on, I'm the athlete that athletics didn't work out. I got hurt. How did I overcome that? I've read that story a million times. But what makes each story unique is how that writer articulated it and what the outcome was. So really be aware of how you are writing it and how you are articulating what you want to convey to us. Try to avoid, to a degree, any, you don't want to be too sarcastic. You don't want to be too sentimental. The self-promoting, there is, depending upon the topic that you've chosen, you can be a little bit self-promoting, but don't go overboard. You have to be in what I'm going to call, you have to be in control of the keyboard. You think about what you're saying, think about what you're writing, think about what we are going to be reading, and then you're going to see a tip on that just next. You don't want us to be reading the first paragraph and saying, same story, move on. We want to hear it. We want to be able to grasp it. We want to be able to look forward to flipping that page or reading the next page of the paragraph, as Trudy said early on. Grab us, keep our attention, and then that way we can get a better idea of who you are. So now we're going to just talk a little bit about some different tips and tricks. Hopefully we've kind of covered the big picture. One of the big things, and I can tell you the three of us did this for this presentation, I guess it was on Sunday evening, read your essay aloud, either yourself or have someone else read it to hear how it sounds. Because even though we are simply just reading it on the admission side or the scholarship side, we are still going to be hearing it to a degree. So you want it to flow. You want it to be able to be understood. If Milt or Trudy is reading it and I'm on the other side of the room, I want to be able to make sure it flows and I want to hear it. One of the things that I always caution on is before you have a family member read it, have someone at school read it. Many times you will see essays focused on the family situation. Trudy was using the example. She had a student was talking about she was average. Her life is average. She has two children, or two brothers and two sisters and two parents and yada, yada. But there was some kind of conflict there hidden underneath, which is great. But the family may not realize that. So read it aloud and have someone else read it. And if it's anything to do with your family, have a faculty member at your high school read it. Have your English professor read it. Have someone else as a neutral party read it first before you start making adjustments. Be cautious of the metaphors. We know how big if you tell me about a basketball player, or you're a basketball player, or you're blocking the shot of the basketball player, we know they're going to be tall. You don't need to tell us that he was as tall as a 6'3" tree. It's okay. We don't have to be that descriptive, but get the point across. But don't get crazy on that. Don't use too many adverbs or adjectives. Now you want to put us in the moment. You want us to be able to see the moment. But again, keep an eye on your keyboard. This is an essay versus a homework assignment. Sometimes homework assignments, and Trudy would be able to vouch for this more than Milt and I, because she's coming from the high school side. Your teacher is going to say your book report, or your essay or whatever has to be 5 pages long, or 1,000 words or whatever. So you as students, a lot of times, I did it when I was in high school and college. We probably all did. You add a few extra words here and there just to make it extend the writing. Don't do that on these college essays. Keep it focused, keep it closed in, keep an eye on, again, the keyboard, the words, make sure it's concise. Avoid quotes. We all can Google quotes. You can literally Google good quotes for college admission essays, okay? And there are some really good ones, and there are some great people who have done some great quotes. I'm just getting interrupted. Milt or Trudy, if you guys can catch into the question and answer box and just see if we can answer those questions. But avoid too many quotes, or definitely avoid quotes that are not necessary. Sometimes they are, especially on the flip side. If your essay is maybe a specific scholarship type essay, you're applying for this particular scholarship. And maybe and I'm going to pick on Truman University, you're applying for the Harry S. Truman competitive scholarship, and we're going to ask you to write an essay. Utilizing a quote from Harry Truman is not a bad idea for that essay. If there is, you're writing for the presidential scholarship at Illinois Wesleyan, maybe look up any of the speeches that president at Illinois Wesleyan has given, or maybe the board of trustees or whatever, and see if there's a quote in there for a particular scholarship. Something like that will work, because that will show us that you've done a little bit of research, whether it be on the individual or the group that is sponsoring that scholarship. If you're writing for an endowed scholarship for, the Milton Berwyn Central Methodist Scholarship that he endowed, look him up. That way, you know a little bit about, maybe there is a quote that person can utilize, but don't just throw quotes in there just to throw a quote in there. That is not really a good idea. Remember, after we or an individual reviews your essay, don't be afraid of getting critical feedback. We all have written something that we thought was great, and we all take defense sometimes when people criticize us. Keep in mind, when we are criticizing, if you will, or critiquing your essay, what we want, what your English teacher wants, or your parents or whomever, they want it to be the best that it can be. And we want the same thing. So don't take offense to it. Remember that we're trying to make it better. Be open. Maybe your sister or your brother, you read it to them and they're much younger than you, and you're like, oh, what do you know about the essay, when they give you this feedback? Well, maybe they're seeing it from a different set of eyes. So who knows where the feedback is going to come from, but don't get defensive of it. Don't be critical of it. Keep it in mind. See if we can add or do better on the essay. Don't defend it. Be open to it. Again, this is something that may be worth $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 scholarship for you, or not. So, it may be being admitted into a school. As Milt said, many of us colleges and universities now, because of COVID-19, are test optional or test flexible or something similar to that. So your essay is going to play not just a critical part for scholarshiping, but maybe just for admission. So don't defend, listen to what people are trying to tell you. It can always be fixed. The delete button on a computer or keyboard is great. So don't be afraid to start over. Don't be afraid to change tenses. Maybe it's going to sound better in the third person tense rather than the first. So don't be afraid to change. Watch your grammar. Again, many times this is not a text. This is not an email. Many students today and many individuals, even in the professional world, we're getting to the point where you are is not you are. It is Y-O-U space A-R-E or apostrophe R-E, not the letter U and not the letter R. So watch your grammar. Remember, this in essence is a professional paper that you're writing to us, not a text or a quick email that you're sending to a friend. As Trudy mentioned, or Milt mentioned, one of the two of them mentioned, reread it yourself before you ever send it in. The worst case scenario is that if you mention the particular school or scholarship in your essay and you do not change it from one school to the other, it's kind of embarrassing. We're not going to hold it against you generally because we're still looking at the content. Sometimes we even get a chuckle out of it. But you want to review that. You want to make sure that if you are applying to Illinois Wesleyan or Central Methodist University, that everything in the essay is focused on that particular school, grammar-wise and everything else. We've had a couple questions in here. What kind of topics should we choose? These are some common essay prompts. There are many others. Check with every school that you are applying to, whether it be for a scholarship or whether it be for admission. But these are typical ones. And again, especially 1 and 3, choose a topic that's important to you and tell us about that topic. One of the favorite topics of an essay for students who are getting into nursing seems to be, and I'm going to give you the gist of an essay. The reason I am choosing to get into nursing or the health science field is because when one of my grandparents was ill and I was visiting them in the nursing home or the hospital, I just so admired how the nurses took care of them and how they treated them with respect and how they treated us as a family with respect when we went to visit. That type of stuff, that type of topic is great, and that can tell us why you're choosing that particular major. So that's wonderful. The uniqueness of you. We want to know about you. As we said earlier on, it's a well-worded story about you. And that's what we're trying to do with the essay. Tell us about a journey. Tell us, one essay I used to proctor, or for our big scholarship at another institution I worked at. One of the essay questions was, if you were on a deserted island, name 3 people you would want with you and why. So there can be many different types of prompts. You can look, again, every school is going to have their own prompt, whether it be for the essay admission or whether it be for the scholarship essay. Go to the school, go to the website, ask one of us, the admission counselors. But these are general ones. Also, many times depending upon what high school you're in, you may be doing an essay in your English comp class. Again, Milt or Trudy, can you guys check the Q&A box up there? Thank you. You may be writing one for class, whether it be this semester or next semester if you're a junior or something like that. Feel free to utilize that. Many times we are not specific, again, with the exception of maybe being a scholarship. We're not overly specific on the prompt. We want to see the essay itself and everything that goes along with it. So just kind of be open to whatever it is.
Mark?
Yeah.
Do you want to speak a little bit to the Common App, since we don't do the Common App, but I know
Sure.
something that I think sometimes, since those are set prompts and stuff that would go kind of across the board, maybe you can speak a little bit to that.
Sure. Milt, you guys use the Common App too, correct, Milt?
We
Oh
do.
yeah, Milt too. Yeah. I just
70% of our applications come from the Common App. However, we do have another admissions application right on our website as well. But go ahead, Mark.
Sure. Well, and that's something that you want to remember, students. The Common App does have a section for the essay. So you want to find out from the individual schools, do they accept the essay off of the Common App, or do you have to create your own? That I can tell you on behalf of Truman State, up to last year, you had to create a different essay. Now we will accept it off of the Common Application. Every school is going to be different, so you want to make sure and figure out what the school wants or needs. Again, sometimes if you have to do both, you have to do, put it in the Common App and then do something separate. You can then be able to expand your essay for what you're uploading in addition to the Common App. Expand on it a little bit more. I know it's a little bit more work, but you want to do it. What you want to do is you don't want to make application via the Common App to an individual school or schools that require an essay and not realize that they are not accepting the essay off of the Common Application. So that's the big thing you want to do. But using a lot of those prompts, they're going to work. Again, most schools, unless it's specifically for a scholarship, they're going to use whatever essay that you have per se, but they would just want it because they want to see the big picture. They want to see all these other things we talked about. Not necessarily did you match a prompt or not for us. What else are we seeing in the question and answer box that we can answer for folks?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Somebody was talking a little bit about what the Common App is. Like when we talk about the Common App, what do we mean by that?
Sure.
So yeah, just take that.
Milt, you want to cover that one?
Just, the Common App, I'm going to tell you right now, just go through your counseling department at the high school. That they're going to know a little bit more about the Common App. But it is an application that you can fill out really just one time, and providing you're looking at, say, 5 schools, and you want each one of these schools to get that application, you simply add that school code to it. And so when you submit it, it goes directly to the school. It's a little bit easier, less time consuming, but that's, in a nutshell, the advantage of the Common App. Real quick, while I have your ears, I also had a young lady, Janaea, ask about undecided majors. You know, we're a liberal arts school. Central Missouri University is a liberal arts school. Mark, is Truman liberal arts?
Correct.
So the advantage of that is simply it gives you a couple of years to take classes in areas of interest. So if you're undecided, you could take 2 years to find out where your strengths lies, where maybe your interest lies, and not miss a beat as far as trying to get out in 4 years. But that's an advantage of a liberal arts school versus, you get into like the University of Missouri, where a lot of the coursework is really on a narrow path. You're a business major, that's the direction you're going. What happens if you jump off that and you want to go into education? It's not as transfer friendly, but I do think for students that are undecided, look at a liberal arts school, much harder than other ones.
A couple other questions here in the chat box that we're looking at, or that I'm looking at. Is it good to write in your essay if you're specifically interested in a topic or an extracurricular or a major at your school? Or, if I've done, again, the cliches, whether it be the mission trip experience or the athlete who's overcoming an injury, I'll answer those separately. Don't be afraid if there's a particular program that you are interested in at a school. Don't be afraid to put that in the essay if it works, if it makes sense. Why am I looking at the medical field? Because I used the example before, because I saw how the doctors and nurses handled and worked with my grandmother, my grandfather when I was younger, and hence the reason why. I've had a brother or sister or a cousin who has a neighbor that has special needs, and that's why I want to get into special education. So if there is something like that works into an essay, then yes, go ahead and add it into it. The other part of that question was, how do I not make the same thing become a cliche, whether it be my experience on the mission trip or I'm the athlete? The difference is it's your story. So as long as you can make it about yourself, go ahead and use it. Go ahead and say it. Because even though I've read it 100 times already, this is still your story. This is still I don't want to call it a cliche, but this is now your story. And if you can grab me and keep me focused on your story, regardless of whether I've read the subject 100 times before, that's what's going to make the difference, is your story. So no, don't be afraid don't think it's a cliche, because it's your story.
Can I speak to that for just a second?
Yeah.
And the only reason I have some very, very close friends who do a lot of mission work, and something like that would be like Mark was saying, it's your story. Well, yes, it's a mission trip, but what did you experience there? I know every one of them is going to be different, even though it's a mission trip. What you experience, where you go, maybe what challenges you see, maybe, what is the purpose of you being there? Are you helping them develop a new water supply? Are you, and what did you learn from that and gain from that personally and internally, and, and be able to speak to that? So, because each one, you may go on 5 of them, but probably you've experienced everything a different way each time, because other things come up. So you just make it about your personal experience, and it'll work. It'll fit very easily.
The last question that I'm seeing here, has an essay ever been a deal breaker or sealed the deal for a student? From an admission standpoint, now, let me back up and say, for this incoming freshman class, you guys who are seniors, that's going to be a really good question, because we don't have a test score for some of you to go through. So there may be some deal breakers, or on the flip side, it may be a deal sealer because of your essay, because we don't have a test score, or we don't have one currently. So yeah, I would be careful on that. In years past, For me personally, with the different schools I've worked at and the different essays I've read, not necessarily. Something in the essay may throw a flag up that I'm glad I read the essay because now I can make someone else aware. I found out that this student in the essay has a hearing disability. So we need to make sure that they sit in the front of the classroom and because they can read lips. So many times I've never seen it be, again, maybe this year might be slightly different, but I've never seen it where it's a deal breaker or a deal sealer for the admission side, though this year it might be different simply because of where we're at with COVID-19.
You know, Mark, just real quick, I'll keep it quick, but you know, for us, it's going to be for us, it's a little bit bigger deal because we've relied so much on ACT and SAT.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the writing skills is kind of what we're falling back to a scoring system with the essay. So I kind of answered the question on the
Yeah, using like a rubrics type thing. Yeah. And ours is just scholarships. So ours is strictly scholarships will be our essays. So
yeah. And the other question here is, can we use, in essence, the same one or two essays for different college admissions? Sure. You know, as long as the prompt matches, don't be afraid to use the same essay for all three of our schools. Just make sure you change the school name. That's the big key. But yeah, don't stress out that I have to make a new essay for every school. That's way too much for you guys to be worried about.
I want to thank our presenters for being with us today, Mark, Trudy, and Milt. It was a very informative presentation. I hope you all took a lot from it. As a reminder, this presentation is recorded, so you can go back and view the information that was presented here. Again, thank you for joining us. After you close this window, a very quick 4-question survey will appear, and it'll help us to improve the services and to improve the workshops from here on out. Again, you can sign up for additional sessions, and we thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right.
Now, do we still continue to answer the questions, or since we answered them kind of through the presentation, are we okay?
You're okay. So we have to close it.
Okay.
Coming in. So thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you guys.
All
Great
right.
job,
Thank you.
everybody.
All right.